What would have taken 10 years took only 10 months. It is phenomenal.
I think collaboration between life science companies, opening their patent library, partnering with each other, willing to risk taking and building manufacturing facilities before they know they will be used, and manufacturing these vaccines, antivirals, and antibodies before we knew they would work, and cooperation with governments throughout the world that invested more than $20 billion. But this is really testimony to what we're capable of doing, and hopefully we will learn from this experience that we will leave these facilities that are created in place in case they're ever needed again.
But Mike, the challenge hasn't ended. I mean, it is about distribution, 7.8 billion people in the world, and we've not done this before.
Well, my guess is there's 214 vaccines, 300 antivirals and antibodies. 30 vaccines have gone into humans. We're well aware that UK has approved the Pfizer vaccine, the US, and it will improve it, in my opinion, later this week, and will be in distribution here in the United States and will be sent around the world. Each of these vaccines are capable of producing more than 1 billion doses, but the Chinese biotech vaccine is also being distributed and I guess will be approved in Indonesia, Morocco, UAE, and other places. And as the news on Bloomberg reported not too long ago, in January and February, I would expect approvals for AstraZeneca and J&J. And so collectively, you might have 5 to 10 billion doses of vaccine that will be available. Antivirals that have been approved for emergency use by Regeneron. They shut down their North American facilities maybe 8-9 months ago and shifted that production to Europe to prepare to produce their antiviral efforts. Roche, who was a major competitor of Regeneron, and they signed an agreement, and beginning in January, after 6 months, they'll be producing. So there is great hope for worldwide distribution. Obviously, the devastation, the tragedies that have occurred from this pandemic around the world will be with us, the mental health side effects for a long period of time. But I do believe the world, if fully understands that you can't solve this problem just in North America or South America or Europe or Asia. You need to solve it in Africa and Europe and every continent in order to bring this pandemic to an end.
So you require coordinated effort, Mike, but there's also the issue of vaccine nationalism. I mean, we hear that President Trump is set to sign an executive order giving priority to Americans where these vaccines are concerned. I mean, what do you make of vaccine nationalism? How much of a problem is it going to be?
Well, I've been in meetings now for 9 to 10 months on how we distribute these throughout the world. The U.S. Put up far more money than anyone else and arranged to have delivery of 1 billion vaccines from 6 or 7 manufacturers if they're approved. But just Pfizer alone has the capacity, it appears, to produce 1.3 billion vaccines. That would cover 650 million people. And if J&J is approved and AstraZeneca, I expect those which are easier to distribute, require in the case of J&J 1 shot, not requiring being held at low temperatures, that these will go to Africa, other emerging parts of the world, South Asia, very quickly. And so there's been maybe more publicity to individual countries and a leader in the country who is manufacturing vaccines, shipping them to other countries. But for 10 months, these are issues that have been addressed. Plans are in place. And in fact, that those vaccines that were shipped to the UK after it approved the vaccine actually came from Belgium. the first half or so million. But they will travel the world this year. And for those that will continue to get this virus, Eli Lilly's emergency approval of their plasma and antibodies and Regeneron's antivirals hold a lot of promise to substantially reduce the severity for those that get COVID.
Mike, the pandemic has had great impact on the global economy, and governments as well as central banks have been buying their way out of this recession. What do you make of the level of debt that's been accumulated? How will that play out, do you think?
Well, as you and I have discussed for years, when you talk about debt, there's two factors in debt you need to consider. One, the maturity, and two, the interest rates. And so our Asia Summit, which is occurring at this time, will bring people from every continent in the world except for Antarctica. And hopefully next year we'll have someone from Antarctica. But in 1981, the US government, for example, short-term rates were 18%, long-term rates 14%. In many parts of the world, interest rates are zero, Japan, parts of Europe. And so selling long-term debt, a country like Austria sold 100-year debt, and it was trading under 1%. So when we look at debt, we have to factor in the maturity and factor in interest. And if we take interest rates in the United States today, 10 years or shorter, $1 trillion in debt today would have been equivalent in interest rate payments to $10 trillion before. So you have to equate those two things, and the reduction in interest rates and what governments have done have obviously forced people to invest in equities and other financial markets around the world. And the explosion of technology to solve our problems, has been amazing. And one of the things we will address here is just what is working. You and I speaking together, people being beamed in as holograms into the conference. I'm coming in as a hologram, others through Zoom and others in person. And one of the enormous successes of Singapore is that we can actually, in Singapore, because of your success in controlling this pandemic, we can actually have 200 or 250 people gather in a meeting.
Mike, looking forward to you coming to us through a hologram. One final question before we let you go, though. Are you concerned that policymakers may be inflating asset classes? Do you see that happening?
Well, when interest rates are zero, the search for a rate of return obviously drives up asset values of homes, of residential real estate in parts of the world, of equity markets. And today we see, in terms particularly of technology and biotech and other life science companies, valuations as multiples that we had never seen before. But those multiples are an inverse of interest rates. And so as we've seen over very long periods of time, centuries, the bond market will underpin equity markets. If you believe interest rates will rise substantially, I think then you will be very concerned about whether you're seeing equity prices too high. But for the most part, most countries have committed to keeping interest rates low longer, and therefore that has supported equity prices, but also the technology. And many things that have changed using those technology, and whether it's been telemedicine, teleeducation, telemedia, telefinance, the most valuable financial companies in the world today, a pure financial company would be Visa, PayPal, MasterCard, and so on, along with JP Morgan and a couple other banks. And so technology changes. PayPal stock this year has gone up more than Citibank or Goldman Sachs are worth, for example.